Okay, so let's dive right in. We can start with a July 19th entry from way back in 1997. It focuses on the film Contact,
Oh, yes.
and it posited some really intriguing statements. Things like no God, no science, no science, no God, and also this powerful idea that passion can force you to look beyond physical possibilities.
That's quite a starting point.
It is. And this early note highlights Contact's central theme. That, even when you're faced with lies, with deception, truth can be discovered.
Hmm.
It's tied to an anecdote about the sacred lemon hoax, that famous historical instance of scientific fraud, where they claimed a new element from a lemon.
Oh, right. I remember that story.
Yeah. The core insight here is quite profound. Every theory has a chink in the armor, and the chink is evidence of truth.
Okay, unpack that a little.
Well, it suggests true understanding often comes not from finding these perfect, flawless systems, but actually by examining where they reveal inconsistencies. It's in those imperfections, Rob.
Those chinks.
That's where new truths often emerge, pushing our understanding forward. They're not just flaws. And the entry suggests an eventual sort of intersection of God, science, fantasy, reality, spirit. Let's jump way ahead now to July 19th, 2023. This entry dives into how popular imaging technology has fundamentally altered how we live. It basically confirms McLuhan's famous idea, the medium is the message. Think about Sylvester Stallone always being acutely aware of being in the frame, or how Lewis Carroll's daughter, Alice, became the celebrity just through photography. It allowed people to sort of experiment with different identities and become them.
Fascinating. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights how deeply technology has permeated everything. Our behavior, even our politics, even for those who don't actively use it much. The notes use Trump as an example, observing he's like any other celebrity because of TV shows, and embodying this, well, stark and blunt observation.
Which is pretty provocative.
It is. That
Yeah.
TV fucked up our heads in democracy. It's a strong claim about how media shapes our perception of power.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this raises an important question for you listening. How does your understanding of truth shift when the truth is always changing because of new technologies and the capacity of human memory to digest it? The contrast between fixed books, static, unchanging, and the wet text of the internet, which is fluid, constantly updated, dynamic. It's a crucial difference.
So from defining truth and reality, these notes also give us some really fascinating insights into the creative process itself and how we capture reality. Let's look at July 19th, 2020. There's this great observation about capturing pivotal moments, like that iconic Hindenburg explosion photograph by Sam Scher. And its impact was partly because he was, and I quote, probably the only one there with a camera ready. And this next thought experiment from that same 2020 entry really makes you pause. If smartphones existed then, everyone would have been taking the same photo or video, and singling out one shot would have been a difficult decision. It forces us to reconsider the unique power of those single iconic images, doesn't it?
It really does. It kind of dilutes the impact, maybe.
Maybe. And this is contrasted with William Eggleston, who takes the best banal pictures of almost nothing, making them iconic in their own sort of opposite way.
The beauty in the mundane. That leads to the idea of flash mobs taking those very banal photos deliberately.
Right, to make the point that such photos are ostensibly pictures of nothing.
Yeah, and the observation is that taking photos as a group makes any one photo matter less, although, a whole collection of photos can still be informative.
It's a different kind of information.
Exactly. And it notes the shift from professional journalism, like the Chicago Tribune, having no reporters actually present for a shooting, to a world where basically everyone is a reporter crime scene photographer.
It reminds the source of Ouija, the legendary New York crime scene photographer, who famously said, "My idea was to make the camera human. I was dealing with people at their most tragic moments, trying to find humanity there."
A very different ethos.
And then there's Andy Warhol, who amplified banality by 100 with his silkscreens of grisly car crashes and electric chairs. He really pushed that boundary, didn't he?
He did, and his approach was often quite ironic. He aimed to make silk screens like a machine, removing the human touch in a way, yet making them iconic. And he suggested that when you see a gruesome picture over and over again, it doesn't really have any effect. Desensitization.
Which connects to the July 19th, 2025 reflection on concerned photography. That style where the photographer uses their work to highlight social issues, injustices.
Right. Photography with a purpose.
But the note states that while the photographer may feel that what they are doing is righteous, it still has to be done with sympathy as well. Otherwise, the victims just become mere extras.
That's a crucial ethical point. It asks you, the listener, to consider the ethical implications of both consuming and creating images of tragedy. What responsibility do we actually bear?
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to the creative process itself. We can draw insights from multiple July 19th entries. The notes observe David Lynch as pretty masterful at compartmentalizing, seemingly reconciling his often creepy, disturbing subject matter with his, well, real-world life. The idea is that there's an unlimited number of departments for creative projects. It cites Marcel Duchamp moving from traditional painting to Daddyism, or Gerhard Richter shifting from family portraits to conceptual sculpture. These big leaps.
So it's about allowing different modes of thinking to coexist.
Kind of. And what's fascinating here is the essence of experimentation the source highlights. You have to be willing to enter the doors on the periphery of creativity, even though there might not be anything behind them. Take the chance.
I like that. It implies risk-taking.
Definitely. This doesn't mean being too compartmentalized, but sometimes, the note acknowledges, it is necessary to close all those other doors, especially when you're facing deadlines.
Right, that focus. Do you think that kind of rigid focus can sometimes be a creative catalyst itself, that constraint?
Absolutely. And the Todd Rundgren production of the XTC album Skylarking, that's from July 19th, 2025, serves as a great example.
Ah, that famous collaboration or conflict.
Bit of both. Rundgren, the producer, imposed these strict constraints, specific tempos, titles, the works, very structured. In contrast, the songwriter, Andy Partridge, worked without those constraints and apparently took a much longer time, more free form.
And the result?
Well, both approaches ultimately led to a really successful album. It highlights that even if you have constraints or you don't have constraints, the results could be successful. There isn't just one way.
Interesting. So process isn't everything.
The source advocates for not looping back in creation, but always moving forward. Keep momentum.
That idea of moving forward and how we process our thoughts, it segues nicely into talk therapy, also from that July 19th, 2025 entry.
Talk therapy. How does that relate?
The core idea is that we often understand things completely in retrospect, after the fact.
Right. Hindsight is 20/20.
Exactly. And the act of talking or writing, improvisation in music or speaking, is a prime example where analysis just has to cease in the moment. You just do it. The creative person's task then, according to this note, is to describe their connection points between the compartments and departments. Because, as the source points out, work can't always speak for itself. It often needs that external processing, that explanation.
It's interesting to note that David Lynch reportedly connects all his creative processes with transcendental meditation, effectively packaging all the compartments into one unified structure, finding a unifying principle. And the source notes that understanding can be universal only on a personal level, kind of like homeschooled children maybe having a very unique but valid understanding.
Personalized universality.
Yeah, and that creative processes often need explanation because what's self-evident to one person just isn't to another. We all have different internal maps.
Very true.
And the concept of l'esprit de l'escalier, that moment when you think of the perfect comeback or insight only after the conversation's over.
Oh, yeah.
But it reminds us to trust spontaneity, maybe, that things emerge when they're ready. So thinking about your own creative pursuits, however big or small, what does this all mean for you? How do you navigate these compartments?
Now, shall we look at the future? Through the lens of AI, particularly in art.
An entry from July 19th, 2021 reflects on trying to contextualize music AI. The realization was that it had to be recontextualized as something else, perhaps a new music avant-garde, rather than trying to fit it into mainstream pop or something turnkey.
So finding a new category for it.
Exactly. It highlights finding interesting aspects even in the errors, like an algorithmic trap piece that was supposedly in C minor but kept throwing in other chromatic notes. Illogically, the mistakes were the interesting part.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the notes from July 19th, 2022 express a slightly queasy and dyspeptic feeling about generative procedures.
Queasy, despite finding them interesting.
Yeah, interesting at a systems level, but still unsettling. There's a clear concern that AI is grossly overhyped. It might cause a lazy disinterest in doing things manually, just letting the machine do it. And a significant worry is if we start viewing art simply as something produced by machines and delivered like any goods we buy online, rather than something uniquely human, born of struggle or insight.
That commodification of art.
Yeah.
The thought of major museums having wings devoted just to AI art in the future is raised,
Wow.
alongside very practical concerns about material degradation, like Andy Warhol's works, apparently needing a specific tube TV to retain its integrity, technology obsolescence impacting the art itself.
How do you preserve digital or tech-dependent art?
Right. The idea of a continuously changing painting is even proposed, though the source quickly adds, that's not AI really, it's just some rules. A sort of algorithmic art, maybe?
And the July 19th, 2025 entry mentions a novel idea, one that's likely already happening somewhere.
Which is,
A bot that continuously churns out content, just generates stuff constantly, and then another bot that curates it based on specific personas or criteria.
whoa, bot generating, bot curating.
Yeah. And this raises the important question, what will this do to further erode artistic ethos? Where's the human intention then? It really makes you think about authorship and value, doesn't it?
And this discussion about algorithms extends beyond just art, right? To our daily information consumption. This is again from July 19th, 2022. The source observed YouTube's algorithm videos mixing these seemingly disparate topics, like Steve Bannon, climate change, and New Ageism, all jumbled together in the feed.
The algorithm's weird connections.
Exactly. Suggesting algorithms might be the culprit for the collective insanity on the planet. That's a pretty strong claim.
It's a huge claim, but you can see the logic. It resonates with a lot of what we experience online, that fractured reality.
And this connects to the internet's broader impact on knowledge itself. The note says, everyone knows something different, and there are many containers for knowledge.
Fragmented knowledge.
Yeah. While we technically have access to all possible knowledge, we wouldn't know where to find it necessarily. The internet has undeniably made us smarter in certain ways, but more stupid in other ways.
That paradox is so true. It leads to a great question for you listening. Are you more book smart or internet smart? Where do you find your understanding these days? Does it feel solid or fragmented? Shifting back to art itself, an idea from 2012 suggests that art is said to die sometimes. But it's not the physical marks on the canvas or whatever that die. It is the ideas behind the marks that die. Painting is still alive in Lascaux caves, physically, but the stories of impaling a bison are long dead. The cultural context, the meaning fades.
Then a fascinating observation from 2025, kind of quirky.
Yeah.
Why do people touch their chest while explaining emotional things? And sometimes their heads, too. You see people do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Heart and head.
It suggests a potentially universal impulse, maybe, connecting heart and mind physically when expressing deeper feelings.
Interesting body language observation. And on the subject of creativity, again, the ongoing debate about music theory versus just a feel for music. This is from 2025.
Theory versus intuition.
Right, where theory is presented as a nice explanation for those things that were previously mysterious. It provides structure, a language, for something often felt intuitively.
Doesn't replace the feeling, just explains it. There's also the idea that we can appreciate parts of things, like just the colors used in paintings and even just the frames. This is also 2025.
Okay.
You don't need to understand the whole complex history or theory of a piece to have some aesthetic experience. It invites a broader, maybe more accessible engagement with art. Just enjoy the color.
Yeah, lowers the barrier to entry, perhaps. Finally, the 2024 reflections touch on Idees Fixe, these incorrigible mindsets that often define relationships, those stubborn patterns we get into, and also a critical concern about cloud computing's reliance and vulnerability. The note says, when you sink a cost, other things sink. A powerful cautionary note about dependencies, especially technological ones.
Wow, quite a range in those final nuggets.
Indeed.
Perhaps it's that cunning is what makes art good art?
Cunning, how do you mean?
Well, maybe not cunning as in deceitful, but rather the cleverness, the strategic thinking, the unexpected twists, that stuff that elevates a piece beyond just technical skill, making it truly resonate.
Ah, the intelligence behind it.
Exactly. And maybe the core challenge today, as the notes suggest, is that we now don't separate art from life so much anymore, leading to our lives becoming like the TV series idea come to life, performance replacing reality.